Dr. Jonathan Pierce was 34 years old and already considered one of the most brilliant cardiac surgeons in the country. His hands were legendary, steady, precise, capable of performing procedures other doctors deemed impossible. He saved lives. Many lives, and he never let anyone forget it. "Surgery time, 4 hours and 12 minutes, he announced as he exited the operating room, ripping off his mask with a dramatic gesture. "Complex mitral valve replacement. Patient stable. Another life saved by these hands." The team around him murmured polite congratulations. They were used to his ego. It was the price of working with the best. Jonathan didn't even look at them as he strode down the hallway, checking his Rolex. 7:30 p.m. He had a dinner at 8 with investors interested in his new private clinic. More money, more prestige, more confirmation that he was, indeed, extraordinary. That's when he saw her. Clara Mendez, 58 years old, palliative care nurse for 32 years. She was sitting in the empty break room, still wearing her stained scrubs, her eyes red but dry. Her hands trembled slightly as she held a cup of cold coffee. Jonathan stopped in the doorway, irritated. He needed to grab his coat that he'd left there earlier. "Excuse me," he said impatiently, entering and heading straight to the locker. Clara looked up, seeming surprised to see him there. "Dr. Pierce, nurse, .. double quotes." He paused, realizing he didn't know her name. "Are you all right? You should go home. You look exhausted." "I just lost a patient," Clara said quietly. "Samuel. He was 8 years old, brain cancer. I'd been with him every day for the last 6 months. Jonathan put on his coat. "I'm sorry to hear that. But you work in palliative care. You know that, .. Well, it's expected. It's part of the job." Clara stared at him. There was something in her eyes that made him stop moving. It wasn't anger. It wasn't judgment. It was something worse. It was pity. "Part of the job," she repeated slowly. "Is that what you think it was? Just part of the job?" Jonathan checked his watch again. "Look, I understand it's difficult. But you can't take it personally. You need to maintain professional distance. It's medicine 101, médecine scientifique," Clara murmured. She placed her coffee cup on the table with deliberate care. "Dr. Pierce, can I ask you a question?" He sighed, clearly impatient. "Quickly, I have an appointment. How many of your patients do you know by name?" Jonathan blinked. "What? I know all my patients." "No," Clara interrupted gently. "I'm not talking about names on charts. I'm talking about knowing them. Their fears, their dreams, their children's names, what music they love, what food makes them smile, how they want to be remembered when they're gone." "I'm a surgeon," Jonathan said defensively. "My job is to fix hearts, not learn life stories. I save lives." "You fix organs," Clara corrected, her voice still soft but carrying a weight that made Jonathan's stomach tighten. "But tell me, Dr. Pierce, when was the last time you held the hand of a dying patient? When was the last time you sat with a family and truly listened to what they were feeling, not just recited survival odds and success rates?" "That's not my job," Jonathan said, his voice rising. "My job is to use my exceptional skills too. Samuel asked me for something this morning." Clara interrupted, tears finally streaming down her face. "He knew he was dying. He was 8 years old, but somehow he knew. And you know what he asked me?" Jonathan didn't respond. "He asked me to hold his hand. Because he was afraid of the dark. He said, if I held his hand, maybe he wouldn't feel so alone when he got to the other side." She paused, wiping her eyes. "So I held his hand, for 4 hours, without stopping. And I sang to him, the songs he loved, The Lion King, Imagine Dragons, even a silly TikTok song he'd shown me last week. And when he took his last breath, he wasn't alone. He was being held. He was being loved." Clara stood up, facing Jonathan fully now. "That is medicine, Dr. Pierce. Not just fixing what's broken, but being present for what can't be fixed. Honoring life, not just extending it." Jonathan felt something strange in his chest. Something uncomfortable. I understand you're upset, but you know what Samuel told me yesterday?" Clara continued, her voice breaking but firm. "He said, 'Nurse Clara, when I grow up, I want to be like you, someone who makes people feel safe.'" He was 8 years old. He knew he wasn't going to grow up. But still, he dreamed about who he wanted to be. She picked up her bag. "You saved 6 lives this month, Dr. Pierce. Congratulations. Your hands are truly extraordinary. But tell me, ... how many lives did you touch? How many people will remember, not just that you fixed their heart, but but that you saw their humanity. And with that, she left, leaving Jonathan alone in the break room, the silence weighing heavier than anything he'd ever felt. He looked at his own hands, the legendary hands of Dr. Jonathan Pierce, steady, precise, capable of miracles. But when was the last time they had held someone dying? He realized, with a sudden twist of nausea, that he couldn't remember. Jonathan didn't go to dinner. Instead, he stayed in that break room for an hour, staring at his own hands as if seeing them for the first time. Then, without fully understanding why, he stood up and walked to the palliative care ward. He had never been there. It wasn't his department. He dealt with the living, the ones who could be saved, the statistical successes. The ward was different, quieter, the lighting softer. There were children's drawings on the walls, family photos, a piano in the corner of the common room. Clara was there, sitting beside a bed where an elderly woman slept. She was holding the woman's hand, talking softly even though the patient couldn't hear her. "Nurse Mendez," Jonathan said quietly from the doorway. Clara looked up, surprised. "Dr. Pierce, why are you here?" "I don't know," he admitted. And it was true. You said, you said Samuel wanted to be like you. Someone who makes people feel safe." He took a step into the room. "No one has ever said they want to be like me." Clara studied his face for a long moment. "Maybe," she said gently, "because you've never given them the chance to know you." "Teach me," Jonathan said suddenly, the words coming out before he could think them through. "Teach me how you do this." "Do what?" "See them," he said, and for the first time in years, his voice didn't carry arrogance, just something raw and vulnerable. "You said I fix organs, but don't see people. You're right. I walk through these wards every day, and I don't know my own patients' names. Not really. I know diagnoses, I know procedures, but I don't know who they are." He looked at the sleeping woman. "Who is she?" "This is Doris," Clara said softly. "She's 76 years old, was a piano teacher for 50 years, has 3 children, 7 grandchildren. Her youngest grandson, Tommy, is learning to play the Moonlight Sonata because it was her favorite. She has stage 4 pancreatic cancer, has maybe 2 weeks." Clara gently squeezed Doris's hand. "But she's not dying of cancer, Dr. Pierce. She's dying as Doris, as a woman who loved music, who taught hundreds of children to find joy in the piano, who loves chocolate cake but is allergic to nuts, who is terrified of being forgotten." "How do you know all this?" Jonathan whispered. "Because I asked," Clara said simply. "Because I sat with her. Because I listened. Not as a nurse hearing symptoms, but as a human hearing another human." Jonathan pulled up a chair and sat slowly. "I don't know how to do that." "Then learn," Clara said. "It starts with a choice. The choice to see patients not as cases, but as people. The choice to understand that your job isn't just to extend life. Sometimes it's to honor it, witness it, make it less frightening at the end." She looked at him directly. "You have extraordinary hands, Dr. Pierce, but they were made for more than surgery. They were made to hold, to comfort, to remind someone, in their darkest moment, that they're not alone." Over the following days, something changed in Jonathan Pierce. He started arriving earlier. Not to review surgeries, but to visit the palliative care ward. Clara became his silent guide, introducing him to patients, teaching him the forgotten art of simply being present. "This is Robert," she said one Tuesday morning. "Vietnam veteran, loves chess, has congestive heart failure. He's been here for 3 weeks." Jonathan extended his hand. "Mr. Robert, I'm Dr. Pierce." The elderly man shook his hand with surprising strength. "I know who you are, Doctor, the heart wizard. My daughter showed me your article in the newspaper. Impressive." Jonathan felt the usual warmth of pride, but then remembered Clara's words. "Not about him. About Robert." "Nurse Mendez told me you play chess," Jonathan said, pulling up a chair. "I'm not very good, but would you teach me?" Robert blinked in surprise. Then a slow smile spread across his face. "You have time. I have time," Jonathan said. And he meant it. They played for an hour. Robert won easily, laughing at every beginner's mistake Jonathan made. And as they played, Robert talked about Vietnam, about losing friends, about coming home and not feeling at home, about meeting his wife at a dance and knowing instantly she was the one, about teaching her to play chess on rainy nights. "She died 3 years ago," Robert said quietly, moving his bishop. "Cancer quipi was by her side until the end." He looked at Jonathan. Are you married, doctor? Divorced, Jonathan admitted. 2 years ago. She said I was married to my job. And was she wrong? Jonathan paused. No, she was right. Robert nodded thoughtfully. My wife used to tell me something. She'd say, love isn't about grand gestures. It's about showing up, day after day, in the small things. He made his final move. Checkmate, doctor. And if I may say, you showed up today. For an old man you don't know, who you can't operate on, who you can't save. You showed up. That means more than you know. That night, Jonathan found Clara in the hallway. Robert taught me chess. Or rather, he destroyed me at chess. Clara smiled. He's good. He's beaten everyone here. He told me about his wife, Jonathan said, about being by her side until the end. I never realized. I never thought about how frightening it must be. Dying. Being alone. That's why we do what we do, Clara said. We can't stop death, but we can stop the loneliness. Jonathan studied her. Why do you do this? 32 years here. You must have seen thousands die. How do you bear it? Because, Clara said, her eyes distant, 32 years ago, my daughter died. She was 6 years old, leukemia, and in her final hour, a nurse held my hand in hers, and she sang, a lullaby my daughter loved. Tears rolled down Clara's face. That nurse couldn't save my daughter. No one could. But she made the end less frightening. She gave us dignity and love when everything else had been taken. And when my Maria took her last breath, she wasn't afraid. She was at peace. Clara looked at Jonathan. So I became that nurse. For all the Marias who came after. For all the terrified parents. For all the patients who just need someone to say, I see you. I'm here. You're not alone. Jonathan realized he was crying. When was the last time he had cried? He couldn't remember. I've wasted so much, he whispered. So many years focused on being the best, on saving the most, on building my reputation. And I never stopped to ask, for what? It wasn't wasted, Clara said gently. You saved lives. That matters. But maybe, maybe now you can do both. Use your extraordinary hands for surgery. And use your heart to see the people you're operating on. 3 weeks later, Jonathan was in the middle of a complex heart surgery. The patient was a 52-year-old man named David Chen. High complexity. Success rate, 60%. In the middle of the procedure, something went wrong. A complication Jonathan hadn't anticipated. Massive bleeding. The patient's blood pressure plummeting. The old Jonathan would have panicked and gone into machine mode, do everything technically perfect but forget there was a person under his hands. But something had changed. Talk to me about David, Jonathan said suddenly to the team as he worked to control the bleeding. Who's waiting for him out there? The surgical nurse, surprised, checked the chart. Wife, 2 teenage children. Daughter, 16, son 14. More, Jonathan said, his hands moving with precision as he worked. What are their names? Our wife is Linda, daughter Sarah, son Marcus. Linda, Sarah and Marcus are waiting out there, Jonathan said, more to himself than to the team. They're terrified. They love this man. He's her husband, their father. He matters. His hands steadied, his mind cleared. This wasn't just a surgery. This was David Chen. This was a father who deserved to see his children grow up. This was a husband who deserved to grow old with his wife. Let's bring David back to them, Jonathan said calmly. Not because I'm the best, but because David deserves it. Let's go, people. 2 hours later, David was stable. The surgery was a success, but this time, Jonathan didn't announce it to the team with arrogance. He simply removed his gloves, washed his hands, and walked to the waiting room. Linda Chen jumped up when she saw him. Dr. Jonathan smiled, not his usual arrogant smile, but something softer, more human. David is fine, he said. The surgery was successful. He's going to recover. Linda collapsed in tears, being held by her children. Oh God, thank you, thank you. Jonathan sat beside them. Can I tell you what he said before the anesthesia took effect? She looked up, surprised. He was awake, for a few minutes, and he made me promise something. Jonathan looked at Sarah and Marcus. He made me promise I would tell you that he loves you more than anything, and that, whatever happened, you are the greatest achievements of his life. He hadn't promised that. David was unconscious before he could speak. But Jonathan imagined that if David could have said something, it would be that. because that's what any father would say. And watching the relief and love wash over that family. Watching Sarah hug her brother, Linda hold both her children, Jonathan felt something he had never felt in all his successful surgeries. He felt like he had truly saved someone, not just a heart, but a family, a future, a love story that deserved to continue. 6 months passed. Jonathan was still a brilliant surgeon, but now he was also something else. He volunteered in the palliative care ward 3 times a week, not to operate, just to be present. He played chess with Robert until the old veteran passed away peacefully in his sleep, with Jonathan holding one of his hands and his daughter holding the other. He sat with Doris and listened to her play piano for the last time, her fingers weak but still capable of creating beauty. He learned the names, the stories, the fears and dreams. And he learned that medicine wasn't about ego or awards or being the best. It was about honoring the extraordinary and fragile thing that is being alive. And when life was ending, making that transition less frightening, one evening, Clara found him sitting beside the bed of a 10-year-old boy named Lucas. The boy was sleeping, but Jonathan was holding his hand. "Does he remind you of Samuel?" Jonathan asked quietly. "A little," Clara admitted. "Same diagnosis, same odds. I can't save him," Jonathan said, and his voice broke. "My hands ... they can't fix this." "No," Clara agreed. "But you can do this." She gestured to their hands, Jonathan holding Lucas's, keeping silent guard. "You can let him know he's not alone. That he matters, that his life, however short, had meaning." Jonathan looked at Clara. "Thank you." "For what?" "For teaching me that being a doctor isn't just about fixing what's broken. It's about seeing what's whole, even at the end." Clara smiled, her eyes wet. "You always had this in you, Dr. Pierce. You just forgot how to look." Lucas died 3 weeks later. Jonathan was there, holding one of his hands while his mother held the other. And when the boy took his last breath, Jonathan sang a children's song Lucas had requested days before. His voice was terrible, off-key, but it didn't matter, because Lucas didn't die alone. He died loved, seen, honored. And when Lucas's mother hugged Jonathan afterward, whispering thank you through sobs, Jonathan finally understood what Clara had been trying to teach him from the beginning. Success wasn't about how many lives you saved. It was about how many lives you touched, how many people you saw, how many moments of human connection you created in the midst of pain and loss. His hands were still extraordinary, but now he knew that his greatest power wasn't in holding a scalpel. It was in holding a hand, in being present, in refusing to let someone die alone in the dark. Years later, when Dr. Jonathan Pierce was interviewed about his career, the hundreds of successful surgeries, the awards, the recognition, he said something that surprised the interviewer. "My greatest achievement wasn't a surgery. It was learning, from an extraordinary nurse named Clara Mendez, that medicine is about much more than fixing organs. It's about honoring souls, witnessing lives, and making people's final journeys a little less frightening." He paused, emotional. "Clara taught me that the most important hands in the hospital aren't necessarily the ones holding scalpels. They're the ones holding the hands of dying people, the ones comforting grieving families, the ones showing up, day after day, for patients who can't be saved but deserve to be seen." "And where is Nurse Mendez now?" the interviewer asked. Jonathan smiled through tears. "She retired 5 years ago. But her lesson continues, because now I teach my residents the same thing she taught me. You have extraordinary hands. Use them wisely. For surgery, yes, but also for connection, for compassion, for reminding people, in their most vulnerable moment, that they're not alone, because in the end," Jonathan concluded, "we won't be remembered for the surgeries we performed. We'll be remembered for the hearts we touched, and not hearts of muscle and valves, but the hearts that feel love, fear, and hope. Those are the only ones that truly matter." And somewhere, in a small house near the hospital, Clara Mendez watched the interview and smiled, because she had lost Samuel so many years ago. But through that loss, she had planted a seed in Jonathan Pierce, and now that seed had grown into a tree that gave shade to hundreds, to residents Jonathan taught, to patients he held, to families he comforted. Samuel's death had not been in vain. His brief life had changed Jonathan, and Jonathan had changed countless others. And so, the lesson passed forward. generation after generation, hand after hand, heart after heart, because that is true medicine, not the science of the body, but the art of the soul.
You are more than what you own. You are what you give. Follow Soul Billionaires and where love rewrites destiny, and the soul becomes the greatest fortune of all.